Now, I present this as a libertarian view of copyright. I will not pretend it is the libertarian view of copyright. I don't think there is a single libertarian view of copyright, and I think that's a good thing. It shows the people who are not libertarians that smart people who like liberty can disagree amongst themselves, and it gives us something to talk about. Now, why do I present this as a libertarian view of copyright? Well, here is a chart from the book. It's basically a take on the Nolan chart. I'm sure you're familiar with the Nolan chart. Basically, the Nolan chart presents in a two-dimensional layout what most people see as a one-dimensional left-right spectrum. So you can see the left-right spectrum right across the middle there. In contrast to the Nolan chart, what I've done is I've tracked out, and of course this is a generalization. I don't want to be unfair to my friends on the right or left. It's a generalization, but I think there's some truth in it. You'll see I've laid it out so that my friends on the right, they're friends of property, as am I. I really like property rights. I think Chris would agree with me that in academia that can sometimes leave you in a lonely place. Nonetheless, I'm going to stick to my guns on that. I think property rights are wonderful social institutions. We need more of them, and my friends on the right agree with me about that. Where I disagree with some of my friends on the right is in regarding copyright as a legitimate form of property. It has property-like aspects. Indeed, I think its best aspects are its property-like aspects. But as the title of the book indicates, I think it's better understood not as a form of property, but as a form of government-granted privilege, rather like, say, taxi medallions or welfare benefits. Now, this does not mean it's per se bad, okay? It simply means that when we assess copyright, we should look at it through the same lenses that we apply to questions like, should we have taxi medallions? Should we have farm subsidies? You know, should we or should we not? It's a cost-benefit analysis we engage in. So my friends on the right agree with me about property rights, but you can see they tend to glom together copyright with other types of property. I think they've been bamboozled by a rhetorical trick. And as a consequence, they do not have a lot of respect for freedom from copyright. And that's where I agree with people on the left. My friends on the left say, we have some problems with copyright. It does restrict freedom of speech. Copyright tells you you cannot go out on a public corner and recite MLK's I Have a Dream speech. And you can't, by the way, because it's under copyright. In fact, the copyright is owned by the British conglomerate EMI. And you can buy a DVD of Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech for $20. And you can watch it in the privacy of your own home. But even that would not give you a license to go down to the Lincoln Memorial and repeat his words. And that's a real restriction on freedom of speech, because you're left to paraphrase his thoughts. Now, that does not convey Martin Luther King's ideas really very well. If you say, well, Martin Luther King talked about having this reverie about the future, and that is not the same. And furthermore, I think it's worth noting that it's one thing for friends of copyright to say we should protect artists and authors and they do creative things, and I'm totally on board with that. I have a lot of respect for the arts. In fact, I have arts training myself. But most people do not have at their fingertips the ability to come up with original expressions, okay? They just don't. And to all those people you say, we're kind of going to limit you. You who have to borrow other people's words to make your points can't do that. That's copyright protected. And so my friends on the left recognize that. Now, where do I disagree with them? They don't have enough respect, if you ask me, for property rights. They say, oh yeah, copyrights, that's a form of property, and you know, whatever. They're just tools of the state, and we tinker with them as we see fit for the public good. No, I don't want you messing with my real property and my tangible property rights in that way. So there you have it in a nutshell. And the libertarian, a libertarian view, I think Chris can probably, he'll probably give you a different, but also pretty libertarian view. But a libertarian view is that we should have both property rights, yea, property rights, intangibles, the kinds of property rights that are recognized in a state of nature and at the common law. And we should also recognize that we need to have freedom from copyright. Both are good things, and we can achieve both. Now, as Jim noted, I'm a big fan of the common law. The common law is in the subtitle of the book. The subtitle is Copyright, Common Law, and the Common Good. Why am I such a big fan of the common law? Well, it's kind of difficult to do that very quickly. This is one reason I offer a diagram. It's worth 1,000 words, they say. Very quickly, I like the common law because it comes from the bottom up. The common law originally was found by judges in the practices of people in the streets and in the markets and in the fields. It's a bottom-up process. And originally, court decisions recognized the common law by bringing in witnesses and asking them, how in your community do you resolve these kinds of disputes? Now, of course, they added to that and elaborated on that. And subsequent to that, commentators, such as Cook and Bracton, kind of summarized the common law and did a great service for us all. But it comes from the bottom up, even though it's distilled. And as this chart indicates, the influences work back down again. It's complicated. It's a tapestry, really. It's very difficult to sum up the common law. And that's a beautiful thing. It's organic. It's complicated. It's a rich web. And this is in sharp contrast to copyright. Copyright does not exist in a state of nature. It does not exist at the common law. It comes from the top down, from Washington, D.C., to us. It is a directed, planned order. Now, I'm not going to say that's necessarily bad. I'm not anti-copyright, but let's recognize the beast for what it is. Copyright is a planned order from the top down. It's purely statutory, and that creates public choice problems. Now, I'm going to illustrate for you in a number of ways how copyright has just ballooned out of anything the founders would have recognized. I'm a big fan of the founders. In fact, I've decided to make my hair like founders' hair. I'm such a big fan of the founders. I don't think I'm going to go with the tricorn. Someone was pushing me that way. No wig, no tricorn, but long hair, sure. And this is just one quick peek at how copyright has changed since the 1790 Copyright Act. Note that date, 1790. Those were the same guys, and they were guys, the same guys who basically created the United States, ratified the Constitution. And when they came around to passing the first copyright statute, which they did pretty quickly once they formed the first Congress, how did they do it? In a lean, mean, clean way. A little over 1,000 words. That's like, twice the length of an op-ed. That's how quickly they did it. And this is actually a very conservative count of the present act. Under some counts, it's such a mess. You can include all kinds of stuff in there. Some counts I get up to 130,000 words or more. This is a pretty conservative count of the present act. But you could say, oh, well, that's just words. What matters is what's in the words. Well, let's talk about what's in the words. How copyright has changed over the years because it's a statute, and what happens with statutes? Lobbyists get a hold of them and they take them to town. What have they done with regard to just one aspect of copyright? The length of copyright, the term. As Jim noted, we've released this book, Intellectual Privilege, under the founders' copyright. That's what I call returning to the 1790 Copyright Act. Big fan of the founders. If it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me. So this book will definitely be in the public domain in 28 years. In fact, the founders did it a little differently. They said, tell you what, we're going to give you a 14-year term at the start, and then if you want to renew your 14-year term, you can get another 14-year term. How Mercatus is going to do that, we'll find out in about 14 years. I'm sure we'll work it out somehow. 28 years maximum. That's what you see with that far left block. 28 years maximum. Where are we today? Well, now I had to approximate this. Now it's, for an individual, it's life or really death of the author plus 70 years. So I figured, someone lives to 35 and then they live to 70 and then we add 70 years and then you get this. And you can see the trend is always up. Copyright getting longer and longer and longer. Now why? Maybe it's because lawmakers said, oh, 28 years isn't enough. We need a little more copyright. Let's just bump it up to 42. Oh, that's okay. Let's take it up to 56. And they're calibrating things, and they're going out and asking people, you got enough copyright? Is everything good? But that's not how it happened, of course. We know how it happens. It happens all the time in D.C. This is why we have farm subsidies. This is why we have welfare. Why we have so many federal programs. Because we have concentrated benefits. We have special interests who go to Congress and do what they're allowed and indeed encouraged to do. They represent their interests. But we don't have a countervailing lobby that says, hey, you're imposing diffuse costs on the rest of us. Every time you up copyright, you're taking away a little of my liberty. You're saying to me, I can't go recite MLK's speech. I can't stand on a street corner and play my guitar. I can't even use my own throat. If I were to sing happy birthday to you right now, I could be potentially liable for $150,000 in statutory damages, even though your ear is my throat. Now that's a restriction on liberty. It may be for the good. It may not be, but that is a cost that we all bear from copyright. And lawmakers, frankly, don't take that into account, which is why the duration of copyright goes up and up and up and up.